What's up, Madridistas? Kian Sobani here. I wanted to give you guys a welcome to the clip you're about to listen to. It's with our good friend Steven Mandis, who I cannot speak highly enough about. Steven is just an awesome guy. He is a good friend of the show. He is a prolific author, and more related to this podcast, he wrote The Real Madrid Way, and more recently, The Real Madrid Revolution, which you can find on Amazon or wherever you get your books. Fantastic book, highly recommend. I finished reading it, and then I had him on the podcast to interview him about the book. The full conversation is 55 minutes long on the dot, and it's over on patreon.com/managingmadrid. Alternatively, if you're on YouTube, you can simply hit join underneath this video and join the membership through that portal instead. If you don't have Patreon in your country, it's up to you. You can join however you want. I'll also link the full episode in the show notes. Steven is awesome. Steven has done a lot for me and this show. He introduced me to Florentino Perez a few years ago, as you may have heard that story. He's also just in amazing circles. Like, the Mbappe and Endrick presentations that were a big hit over the summer. Not only was he there, he was just sitting in a row behind Florentino Perez on the pitch for those presentations. So that's the kind of guy Steven is. That's the kind of access he gets, and obviously the club gave him full access for both of the books he wrote about Real Madrid. So enjoy the conversation, and again, if you like it, this is the kind of stuff you get if you're a member. You get exclusive content like this, including the upcoming second leg against Manchester City, the biggest game of the month, no question. That post-game show is only for members. So again, go to patreon.com/managingmadrid or hit join underneath this YouTube video and sign up, get a bunch of cool content. And without further ado, here is a snippet from that conversation with Steven. I think it's really interesting because in your book, you bring up many examples, but you brought up the example of Rodolfo Hecht. So Rodolfo Hecht, and I don't know if I'm saying that name properly, but if I'm not, please intervene. But Rodolfo, in 1997, that 1997-98 season, he goes to Berlusconi and asks him to kind of resurrect the idea of the European Super League. And when I was reading that part, it might as well have been written in 2025 because it's all the same things. His proposal was like, look, there's too many uninteresting games. It was like eerily similar to the current Super League proposal, which is have divisions. Most teams are safe from relegation. And then UEFA comes in with heavy threats to the breakaway clubs and says, you can't do this. And then eventually the G14 meets with UEFA and they come to an agreement. So it doesn't actually happen, I guess is the point. But every time it's kind of had to have happened, something else happens and UEFA kind of budges on something else. So where do you see this headed? And also the idea of the G14 was interesting too, because it doesn't really, I don't think, exist the way it did before. And also, Steven, like, the weird part is that the big clubs now are not the same big clubs when we were younger. Like, so how do you decide, who these big clubs will be? It's no longer AC Milan when we were kids, and now it's people like Manchester City. Like, and so I just want to get your thoughts on all of that and where you think it will actually head realistically.
Yeah, it's amazing what's happened with regards to the teams changing dramatically, because the clubs that had big names like Ajax or some of those clubs which were very good back in the day are still good, but they're not at the elite top sort of 10 teams on a regular basis. And that, I think, that's been more economics, where once players had free trade after the ruling and they could play anywhere and everything else, they obviously the people that could afford it were people in large capital cities for the most part. So that's why you see the Milan teams or Madrid or Barcelona or London or Manchester. So you kind of had the advantage of having an economy that sort of supported it in a country that also had an economy that could support it. And subscribers, paid TV subscribers to pay these players the salaries. So that's kind of why I think that there's been a shift. And then obviously there's people who made business decisions. So in Italy, the owners were so used to just always paying the cost of having the players, and then what the cost became so large that even the Berlusconis of the world were like, I can't afford these losses anymore. Where Real Madrid didn't have a billionaire owner to support it, so Real Madrid's like, we better figure out how to commercially be viable to pay because we can't have a billionaire owner. And then Barcelona did the same. And I think there's a reason why they're so strong from a commercial standpoint, way ahead of many people, is because they had to um, get that way. So there's reasons behind why the teams are now where they are for the most part, and then you have these exceptions where a sovereign wealth fund or some other like very large entity, financially backed entity, can sort of just pump lots of money into it, especially if they have control or soft control over sponsors. Say, hey, sponsor this team because of all the rules of financial fair play. So that's why, like, you can't really put a Man City, for example, and compare it to like like Real Madrid from the sense of like the economic resources that are available to them and the opportunities that they have. So anyway, that's that. If you ask me where it's going to go from here, as I said, I think the trend is that people are watching less and less TV and have too many options, and so they look forward to the match that they can watch. And this is playing into the hands of the Premier League because the Premier League, in some ways, is a super league in that, like, this last weekend, what was there, Man City, Arsenal, or like, so it's like, okay, am I going to watch that? Or I didn't even watch the Real Madrid game this weekend. I know they lost, but it was like, what, Espanyol? Like, I don't even, like, I don't know. I'm sure Real Madrid and Man City are also just thinking like, I got to play this big Champions League match coming up, you
Yeah.
know.
By the way,
So
you and the rest of the world are correct in choosing Manchester City versus Arsenal over Real Madrid versus Espanyol, which was just not nearly as entertaining. Very Espanyol is defending in a low block. Real
right,
Madrid can't. There was just bad officiating, bad challenges, like, and also like the broadcast quality. It's just not as like, as I have to be unbiased and objective. It's not as entertaining as the Premier League.
right. So that's what you have. You have eight teams that are really competitive within the Premier League. They have double the broadcasting revenues as La Liga, so they have a lot more money to pay their players. The average player in the Premier League makes double what it makes in La Liga, so they have more stars and talent there. People want to see stars and talent, and what the Premier League is becoming is its own super league in some ways. So you can see why Barcelona and Real Madrid are very concerned, because if imagine this was like college football, right? You would have the SEC, which has Alabama and whatever, Georgia and Florida and all this other stuff. They would probably say, like, if in an ideal world, we'd love to get Ohio State and Michigan. Like, they come out of your league and come over to us because then we don't need anybody else. And if the Premier League had their druther, like, if they wish they could say, like, okay, Real Madrid and Barcelona come into the Premier League, and then they just say, and we're going to close it. It's like, of course they would be dominant because they already have the 6, 7, 8 teams that are already globally followed. So yeah, so people don't want to watch the other meaningless games, even the Champions League. As I wrote in the book, there's Champions League. Sometimes Real Madrid or Liverpool has to play on a Tuesday or a Wednesday because of scheduling issues, like they have to play the Club World Cup or something like that. And you'll see that I can't remember. I think it was a Liverpool or a Man City Arsenal game. What blew away the ratings of I think it was a quarterfinal match in the
Yeah,
Champions League.
yeah. It was. I think this was last season, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that just tells you something.
yeah,
So as I warn UEFA, you know, be careful because the competition's not necessarily the Super League; it's the Premier League in itself. And now you can see that the England is sort of doubling down on, hey, we want to protect our league and everything else. So and now there's a lot of politics involved.
yeah, yeah.
What happens to these teams?
Yeah.
But why was and then and the Premier, you may not realize this, but the Premier League the channel that owns the rights for the Premier League in the United States, for example, um, owns uh, what's the largest Spanish network as well in
Mm.
the United States. So you are giving for free all these Spanish speaking people at very high quality production, like a high quality product in Spanish in the United States that's free. If you want to watch La Liga in the United States, you have to subscribe to ESPN Plus to get it now. So okay, now you're what is happening is the Premier League is educating all these Spanish speaking people in the United States about the Premier League, and many of their stars are in the Premier League now. So you're starting to see the Premier League start pulling further and further and further away. And then you have the Italian teams, like if you're AC Milan, Juventus, or Inter Milan, you're freaking out because you're like, okay, you have the Premier League, you have La Liga, but I mean, name one star that's in Italy, really, like a global superstar. There is none.
I mean, everyone who listens to this podcast is a nerd, so
Yeah.
we could name quite a few. But no, it's true. Like in terms of a superstar icon, I don't know if there is
Right.
one.
It's not the
Lautaro
days of
Martinez
there's
would probably be the
Zidane there,
closest.
right?
Yeah.
Zidane used to. I mean, just think about all the great people that used to be in Italy. There's nothing like that now.
No.
Even the great Italian coaches don't coach in Italy. Like it's incredible if you think about it.
I mean,
So
oh, so I have a follow-up question on that because like even in La Liga, it's not what it used to be, right? You know, obviously Real Madrid and Barcelona will have the A-listers. Even like Barcelona's A-listers are not what it used to be, but they'll still have the draw. Real Madrid will have the draw, but it wasn't just these two. Like when I was growing up, it was Valencia made it to a couple back-to-back Champions League finals and had some iconic players. Teams like Villarreal had Riquelme going to the Champions League semifinals. Real Sociedad with Xabi Alonso in their Champions League break. Like it's not like that anymore. My follow-up question related to that is people want to see stars. That's why the Premier League is, the most viewed. Everyone wants to tune in. Part of the reason the Premier League has so many stars is because they don't have a as strict salary cap, like La Liga does. La Liga, like for example, has really rich owners. For example, Almeria has a very rich owner who can't really spend his own money because he can't outspend what Almeria bring in. And not that it would be maybe a wise financial decision to start allowing free spending like this because you might get the Malaga situation where you can't pay the bills. Um, is that a solution? Like, should La Liga just come out and be like, okay, you want private ownership? Come out and spend as much as you want, buy all of our teams, and just throw money at everyone, and that way we can compete. Or is it the correct financial decision to be like, no, we're going to be strict about this. We're going to make sure everyone has a healthy financial situation?
well, I think you want everyone to have a healthy financial situation. I just don't like like you bringing up La Liga. Like this is why when I'm with a La Liga people, and they tell me about all their great successes and everything else, and I'm not trying to say they have not done it. They have in some areas they have done a very good job. But if you're La Liga, what are you really selling? El Clasico. Like, why
That's
would
it.
someone really, right? It's the Real Madrid brand because I want to see Real Madrid all the time, or I want to see Barcelona all the time because I'm two big fans, and then I'm selling El Clasico to the global fan essentially. Okay, if you're trying to sell the Premier League, every week I have
Yeah.
Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Man City, Man U versus Man City, whatever the thing is. Every week there's at least one Super League type match. That's what you're selling. That's why they do sell. And so this over time, right? It's just the Premier League is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you're somebody who has a lot of money and you have what I would say is like an interest in soft power, or you have many affiliations in which you can get sponsors, because you can overnight in England create a massive team just like several have, because they can tell, their tourist authority to sponsor the team, and tell their oil company to sponsor the team, and tell various entities to sponsor them. They just have enough clout to do that. So is someone going to do that in Spain? Well, I don't know. All the people who would have the money already have a team in England, or I guess PSG in France. But PSG now, as you can see, like they're talking to people in England about having, multi-club ownership, but trying to get a team in England because they need to be a part of that. Um, and being in France, I mean, why would anyone, after Mbappe left and Messi left, like why would anyone pay subscriber money, a global fan, to watch the French league?
Yeah.
Why would you watch why would you subscribe? What is the Bundesliga selling? Really? They have Bayern Munich wins 9 out of 10 years, the Bayern Munich will win. At least La Liga has El Clasico. I mean, what are you going to say, Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich match?
I mean,
So
look,
what?
it's a great match, and the thing with the Bundesliga is that like all those stadiums are packed. They get incredible revenue. They get
And that's
incredible attendance, but it's all local, right? It's not a
That's
global
local. That's
market.
what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say is so
yeah,
to me, there's two sports here, and people confuse them together, and they're not.
yeah.
One is a local sports. Like I said, Michigan has 110,000 people show up for a Michigan football game. Like
Sure.
it is
Yeah,
a very big local, and they have global fans or whatever, or fans whatever at a certain level. But it's not, the same thing as the NFL. Not even close.
yeah.
So they're two different things, and that's why people are afraid to say it. And this is like also, as I start the book, as you know, I say, when people say we're trying to protect the fan, or that we're doing this for the fan, I always ask the people this, all the top executives, who's the fan? Because yes, there's 5,000 people protesting in Liverpool or in Manchester about the Super League, but ask the casual global fan or a kid that's 12 years old if they want the Super League or the idea of it. I'm sure that they'd say yes, because they you know they're watching three screen a kid's watching three screens at the same time, and they
Yeah.
don't want to watch Real Madrid play Leganes or whatever. They don't care, but they'll watch them when they play Man City. You guys, because you guys are such nerds, may not like that, but think about the NFL.
Yeah.
It works. And I think in the end, it's disingenuous too, because people say, although it was not a closed league, there was a way for people to get promoted into the Super League. So that's just a ploy to sort of tell people like why to be against it. There was a way for people to get promoted, but in the end, you're trying to tell me the Premier League's not a closed league? Of course it is. For the Champions League, how many teams have really qualified for the Champions League in the Premier League? It's come down to 6 or 7 teams for the most part. Yes, there's anomalies. Leicester City, or like there'll be teams every once in a while that will do it, but no one ever wants to look at financially where they are, like the amount of money they had to lose to get there or to stay there was enormous, and people don't want to talk about it.
It's the reality. It's the truth. I mean, everything is star driven. Like even with us, we saw it when Cristiano Ronaldo left, and we're talking about Real Madrid, a massive club. You could, I think I've told you this before over the phone, but that like when Ronaldo left Real Madrid, the numbers on our website, the number that was lost from our monthly views, the Juventus website gained on SB Nation. Like people just follow the stars. Like Mbappe signing for Real Madrid is good for this podcast. Vinicius being an icon is good for this podcast. But like if we covered, I don't know, Mallorca FC, there's no way we could do this for a living, right?
Right.
And if Real Madrid go through a bad spell and the stars kind of just peel off, we'll still get the diehards, but you know the marketability of this podcast also would is driven by the stars. That's the reality. That's what it is. Um,
That's why it's disingenuous for La Liga to say, "Look how great we're doing," when now you have on one team Mbappe, Bellingham, Vinny Jr., Rodri. I mean, you have so many stars, and it's
yeah,
like, yeah, people want to watch La Liga. Like, no, yes, but not the real general global fan who watches the superstars.
right.